Hi everyone, Jewel back again with another super cool astrology video. And today we're talking Aries rising and what are some of their characteristics and a little bit about what their life is like. And when I do these videos, I'm talking about an equal house system. I'm not talking about Placidus or Regimontus or Koch or anything where you're going to have intercepted houses. I don't believe in intercepted houses. I always use equal house system. So every house is going to be represented by a planet in my videos. So what is the rising sign? It is the sign that was rising on the east at the moment of your birth. So whatever sign, was coming up right then, in the eastern sky, that's the sign that rules you. And so we're talking about people who are ruled by Mars because these are Aries Ascendants. So, the ascendant and the rising sign is the same thing. We just use a different word there sometimes. So, let me get comfy here. This might be a longish one. So these people, of course, are ruled by Mars. So it's really important to look at how Mars is placed. Where it's placed, what house it's in, what contacts it's making, because that is really, really going to modify the personality of somebody with an Aries ascendant. Much like somebody with a Capricorn ascendant, it's really important to see how Saturn is placed. Aries ascendant, much the same thing, more so than other ascendants. Being ruled by Mars, this makes these people usually athletic. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be a pro football player. They usually, just tend toward athleticism. They tend to enjoy sports. They tend to enjoy using their bodies. They're very physical, strong, competitive. They can be driven. They're very direct. They don't mince words, and they really don't beat around the bush. And they tell it like it is. And they're very motivationally simple. They're not simple people. They're actually kind of complex. But motivationally, what they're after tends to be pretty cut and dry. And we'll talk about what those things are as we go along here. So I'm getting an ear infection, so I'm going to be fiddling with my aching ear here, so you'll have to excuse me. They want to win. They want to satisfy their desires. They're very desire-driven because, Mars is about desire, about, getting what one wants and acquiring, and it's a very selfish planet. So, when that really is ruling the whole personality, they're going to be very reflective of that. So they tend to be very much about the self. That doesn't mean that, they're going to be, that the bad side is selfish. They can run that way, but you have to look at everything. The second house, we have Taurus there, and it's interesting with Aries Ascendant because, we have all the houses on the traditional dial. Every traditional house is ruling every house. So, with Taurus on the second, it really, they value senses and pleasure. Because, the second house, is what we value. It's our self-esteem. It's what we give value to. And Taurus here, Taurus is really, really about physical pleasure and sumptuousness and sensuality and things that have to do with the senses. And so, what we value tends to be things having to do with Taurus. And also money. They value money. Money is something that, they give a lot of credence to in their life. They usually had enough growing up. because, you know, the first, the second, third, and fourth house describe our early upbringing. And this is the toddler years, you know, really, that we're talking about when we talk about the second house. And they usually had enough, and they were usually a very demanding toddler and small child. I mean, they cried loud, they cried hard, they were stubborn, and they got what they were asking for. And that's really interesting about the Aries personality, because that kind of sets them up for how they are as adults, because, you know, they got those physical needs met. You know, they cried for it, it happened. So they tend to have that expectation throughout their life. Their sensual appetites were fostered, you know, in this period of life. So yeah, getting their needs met really sets them up for winning more of that, generally. So third house, we have Gemini, and, you know, this is the house of communication, siblings, short trips, transit, and there could have been, or oftentimes was, a lot of movement in the childhood. That could have been a lot of moving around, but that could also just been a lot of traveling, a lot of trips. There was usually a lot of short trips in the upbringing. And, you know, it was, they tend to actually have more of the more stable childhoods than a lot of the other rising signs, but you have to look at everything, because maybe that's not the case. Maybe some of the planets are debilitated, or Mars is like being afflicted by Pluto or something. You have to look at everything, people. So yeah, a lot of moving around in the early childhood, a lot of communication with siblings, a lot, even into adulthood, a lot of talking, hanging out with siblings, communication with brothers and sisters. Aries Ascendant is usually extroverted, and with Gemini here on the third house, they tend to be talkative. They tend to be chatty people. And they're not so much bookish, but they are always picking up information from everywhere. You know, from newspapers, or, you know, all media, or, you know, what they hear, or they're not generally people that read a lot of books or are very much, you know, into literature. They're not the most intellectual rising sign, but, you know, the way they get their information is very streetwise and very everyday. And I mean, they can be highly intelligent and be very much self-taught. Fourth house, we have Cancer there, and so this is the house really of the mother and of our nurturing and our, you know, most intimate self. And when we have, you know, Cancer proper ruling this house, oftentimes they had a very nurturing mother. You have to look at the moon, because maybe the moon, you know, is in Scorpio or in aspect, you know, brutal aspect to Pluto or something. You have to look at everything. So generally, they had a very nurturing and feminine mother. They tend to be attached to their mother, even as adults, and are very protective of females. Even female Aries risings tend to be very protective of females. And they themselves, as, you know, they are adults, they are very attached to their own home. Home means a lot to them. It's really where their heart is, more so even, you know, than other people. So, you know, they have a lot of bravado, but, you know, this is a sign that really does need, you know, that cozy home base where they maybe even have, you know, embroidered their own pillows. So, fifth house, we have Leo there. And Leo likes to party. And it's interesting on the fifth house because Aries rising really comes out in a social situation. I mean, they can really be the life of the party. These people are fun. And they can really get you going. And they're hilarious and very entertaining. And they generally like group situations, parties, get-togethers. They're generally social people, and a lot of the fun of their personality really comes out when they're doing things related to the fifth house. The fifth house is, you know, fun, games, romance, risk. Aries loves risk. Aries rising takes more chances than other rising signs because they find risk fun. These are the people who will jump out of airplanes and talk about how awesome it was afterwards, even though they had a near-death experience. These are people that, you know, will participate in risky sports and not have an issue with it. They don't have a lot of fear, this rising sign, because their fear, they tend to associate that with fun, where the rest of us, it's associated, you know, with death. So, you know, Aries rising is really interesting in that they're very brave, but they have to be careful because they are more accident prone because they don't have that, you know, visceral fear for their physical self like the rest of us do, because, you know, they're going on that roller coaster without the seatbelt and they're thinking how awesome it is and they could fly out at any minute, and knowing that makes it even more fun. So they're an interesting lot. They love things, they love to have fun with things of the fifth house. So children, and I consider pets, oftentimes, their fifth and sixth house matter to me. And these people, you know, Aries rising tends to love animals. They tend to be very good with them. They're great animal trainers. They have an affinity for animals, and they're awesome with children. There's a lot of Aries rising that actually works in the child care industry. They're really, really good, like preschool teachers, nursery school teachers. They do really well with, you know, coaching, having to do with, you know, teenagers that nobody else can stand, but, you know, they've managed to have fun with it. So they love to have fun with children. They love pets. They love expressing themselves through children. And when they have their own children, they tend to be very fun and permissive parents. So, you know, anything with the fifth house with Aries rising, you know, is going to be kind of a party. Sixth house, you know, they have Virgo there, and they tend to be perfectionists in their work life. They tend to work with their hands, and they are good with their bodies. I mean, because they're so physical. And then, you know, Virgo, you know, it just lends so much dexterity. These people are, you know, really, really good with all kinds of trade. Anything that, you know, is hands-on, carpentry, electricians, stuff like that, where you have to use, you know, your hands with your mind power, and, you know, animal training, things like that. They're incredible typers. Oh my gosh, these people, you know, stenographer from hell, whoa. So, you know, and they're conscientious about their work and about what they do. You know, they kind of have a little bit of a party attitude in general, but when it comes to their work, they can knuckle down. Seventh house, hello. We have Libra there. And so, you know, the seventh house is the partnership house. It describes the things we're looking for, the things we really haven't accepted in ourselves, so we're looking for that outside of ourselves in a partner, and that's really, you know, the basis of attraction. And Aries rising is really looking for balance in a partner. They tend to be a little bit on the nutty side, and they tend to attract a partner that is more quiet, more opposite, very opposite, in fact, and very much into pleasure as well. Because, you know, we have Venus ruling this house because we have Libra there, and we also have Venus ruling the second house because we have Taurus there. So, you know, the second and the seventh house, you know, have a lot to do with each other. So what they value and what they attract and are looking for are very much wrapped up. So they tend to value a partner that is, you know, sensual. They don't mind somebody that has money. They're not going to turn that down. They aren't necessarily, you know, looking for a sugar daddy or a sugar mommy, but that is not gonna make them think, you know, twice about you if you've got that going on. So they appreciate, you know, what value you bring to them. They don't mind an arm charm. They are very much about somebody who can bring them beauty, who can bring beauty into their life. They often attract, especially the men, because the men tend to be, a lot of times, you know, very well built and quite masculine. And they don't have an issue generally attracting women, Aries rising. And so there's a higher instance where you see them with a beautiful partner. And the women, you know, tend to attract a man who is more feminine than herself. Aries rising females are interesting in that they almost always wear the pants in the relationship, and they feel like they need to. And if somebody's going to get broken up with, it ain't going to be them. They make the decisions, and they like to keep a certain amount of control in the relationship, and they're willing to compromise because, and they actually attract a very compromising mate. Aries rising females can have an issue with respecting their mate. They need to make sure that they get with somebody who can stand up to them, because respect is a huge issue with these women, and they need somebody who they can really push against, and with the men as well, especially if Mars is in aspect to Neptune or Venus. Then you're going to have an Aries rising male that is actually, you know, what he's looking for is a little bit feminized. So, you know, again, you know, with this rising sign, you have to look to how Mars is placed, and it's important to consider, you know, the gender of this rising sign as well, because, you know, the females can just be very different than the other rising signs. They tend to be more aggressive as well, even in relationships, especially going after a relationship. Aries rising females are very much about, you know, they don't beat around the bush. They'll make their needs known, and they tend to get the number first. So 8th house, we have Scorpio there. And this is interesting because, you know, Pluto and Mars both rule this house, and whatever house Pluto rules, it really wants to control. and it wants to own it. And, you know, a lot of the personality is about the 8th house with Aries rising, because, you know, Mars is the original ruler here. Mars is like, you know, it's the masculine ruler of Scorpio, and Pluto is, you know, the feminine ruler. And so they have a lot to do with this house. It has a lot to do, you know, with even how they show up in their daily life. So, you know, with their rising sign co-ruling this and Pluto ruling this, they are very obsessive people. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to come through your window because they've decided they've got to have you, maybe. But mostly that means they're very goal-oriented. I mean, if they decide to do something, they can be very single-minded. And with Mars and Pluto ruling the 8th house of crisis and ups and downs, these people actually tend to weather these things pretty darn well. And they can remain in control more so, and they can handle more stress more so than the rest of us. They're very strong-willed, you know, because we have a lot of the personality in this house, and they have a higher sex drive, more prone to sexual obsession, and the 8th shows what we get from the 7th. So really the 8th is the results of the partnership. And these people can be sexually controlling, meaning that they are not going to share. You aren't going to find a lot of Aries risings, or maybe any, that are polyamorous or into open relationships. Perhaps that's going on because we have a lot of Uranus, or maybe Uranus is on the ascendant or something, you know, you have to look at everything. But usually Aries rising is very much about that one partner, and they're very focused on the object of their current sexual obsession. And they're very much, you know, focused on their partners because they're looking for that deep sexual connection. They're looking, you know, really for the earth to move. And it's an interesting rising sign because they're a lot like Scorpio rising in a lot of different ways, because they have so much to do with the 8th house. So I think that covered it with everything in the 8th house. But yeah, really an interesting personality, because and they tend to make good crisis workers. People that can respond to crisis, and people that can actually you know, just go on to automatic pilot and bypass the emotions and the feelings of the situation, because they, you know, need to take action. And so, you know, ambulance drivers, ER doctors, people that, you know, have a lot of adrenaline and crisis involved in the job, these people can handle it, and they can sleep at night too. So 9th house, we have Sagittarius ruling that house. And so, you know, this is the house of our belief system, and this is Jupiter, you know, ruling this. And they tend to be very worldly about their belief system. They are not so much married to one religion or concept or one way or the other. They're very much about, you know, learning a little bit about everything. They, you know, you won't find a lot of these people that are, you know, hardcore one thing or the other. They are more of a worldly thinker when it comes to religion and spirituality, and they tend to hold it more loosely than other people do, and tend to be very open to concepts, you know, having to do with religion and philosophy and spirituality of other cultures. You know, they love foreign religion, foreign belief systems. So they can incorporate a lot of that into their own lives and, you know, develop a belief system that's very much based on multiculturalism. 10th house, we have Capricorn there, and they can become, once again, very masterful at their job and their craft because, you know, Saturn is ruling this house. And Saturn, you know, is about precision and achievement and, you know, getting where they want to go. And so, you know, Aries Ascendant tends to be known for being driven and for being even a little bit coldy, meaning that they are very much known for their boundaries. You know where these people begin and they end. You know, unless there's a ton of Neptune going there, you know, the ascendant ruler with Neptune is going to change that a little bit. But generally, they have a lot of boundaries because, you know, they're ruled by Mars, and then, you know, the 10th house, what they grow up into is discipline, and that may take longer for some of them than others because this is one of the more immature rising signs. It tends to take them longer to grow up into their 10th house. They can be well into their 40s, these people, until, you know, they unclip the snowboard and decide to get a full-time job. So, you know, they're very playful people, and they can take their play very seriously because they can be known for that. The 10th house is not just career. It describes our image, our public image, our you know, the reputation that precedes us. And so these people can be known for being, you know, very structured about what it is they do. But what it is they do is usually play a lot. So they can be known for that. But, you know, when they, you know, do achieve that structured work life, they can actually be very masterful at it because they are so much goal-oriented. They can get where they want when it comes to career, when they decide what that's going to be and find something appropriate for them. They also, another thing is they do not do well with authority in the workplace. It has to be somebody that they respect. And they actually will fall in line because, you know, this is a leadership sign, but actually Mars is more of the soldier. The soldier is not the general. Soldier means the general, you know, the population of the body of the dudes. So, you know, they tend to be good wingmen and good followers, but they have to respect the authority that they're following, and they'll actually follow you into battle if they respect you. But because we have Saturn here on the 10th house of career and Mars, you know, that more immature planet of following, ruling the ascendant, we often see, you know, somebody that can get into headbutting, especially the men, into headbutting in work type situations when they feel that their respect is encroached upon, or they cannot respect who it is they're working under. So respect has a lot to do with how well they do in the workplace. 11th house, we have Aquarius there, and this is the house of friendships. And Uranus rules this house, and Saturn co-rules this house. And they can often have a very eclectic collection of friends. They can be accepting of all types. They like to run with strong-willed people as well. And the groups they join tend to be humanitarian in scope, and they don't have a lot of class boundaries. They like to associate with all types. The 11th house, we have Pisces there, and sorry, 12th house. Oh, we're almost done, 12th house. We have Pisces there, and this is an interesting placement because it really gives this Aries rising the ability to see the big picture. They just have an understanding of how life and death and spirituality and all these things work. A better understanding than the rest of us. And they may not even understand that because they're born with this. And they tend to be able to let things go easily, more so than the rest of us, because this is the house of letting go. And we have Pisces here, and so they tend to not hang on to things as rigidly as the rest of us. It's easier to let things go, and they're undoing. A lot comes through addiction. They're self-undoing. You know, Pisces is about addiction, and Neptune, and this is the house of self-undoing. And oftentimes, you know, they have to watch the sauce because it can really liven them up. And, you know, drugs and alcohol are really fun to them. And they can get way, way too addicted too fast. So they absolutely have to watch out for that. So this is my interpretation of Aries rising. And I will be back soon with my next ascendant video. And we're kind of getting towards the end of these. These are so long. And then we'll be on to something else. So you can find me on Facebook at Truth in Aspect Astrology, or on the web at truthinAspectAstrology.com. And I do consultation. I specialize in asteroids and planetoids and synergy. Synastry, oh my word. I've talked too much. Synastry, which is, you know, partner comparisons and relationship and intimacy.